Hello, everyone. Welcome to a very special episode of the Spirit of Prophecy podcast. We are not going to be talking so much Bible today as we are history. We're going to be looking at some American history and talking to a part of that American history. We are going to be interviewing a survivor of the USS Liberty incident. And if you are not familiar with the USS Liberty incident, this is something that you should be familiar with. Unfortunately, not many people know about this, but there has been kind of an awakening about this particular subject. Guys like Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens, they've been doing programs about this, talking to some of the survivors of this attack. And this is a part of our history that when you look at it, it's one of these things you're not supposed to look at. Well, I'm the kind of person, if you tell me not to look at something in history, I'm probably going to go looking into that. And this is one of these subjects too, that if you start looking into it and you start drawing the obvious conclusions, you get called a bunch of nasty names. And I'm telling you, you just need to look into this story. And I'm going to tell you, when you do, the conclusions are one of these things that's very painful. Nobody wants to point out the obvious and state what we're all thinking, but I'm going to, okay? And so I am, just before we get to the interview though, I did want to talk a little bit about it. We are going to hear from an actual survivor of this incident, but in case you are not familiar with the USS Liberty incident, here's what it says on Wikipedia. It says the USS Liberty incident was an attack on a United States technical research ship, a spy ship, USS Liberty, by Israeli Air Force jet fighter aircraft, Israeli Navy motor torpedo boats on 8th of June 1967 during the Six-Day War. The combined air and sea attack killed 34 crew members, naval officers, seamen, 2 Marines, and 1 civilian, an NSA employee, wounded 171 crew members, and severely damaged the ship. At the time, the ship was in international waters, north of the Sinai Peninsula, about 25.5 nautical miles northwest from the Egyptian city of Arish. Israel apologized for the attack, saying the USS Liberty had been attacked in error after being mistaken for an Egyptian ship. Both the Israeli and United States governments conducted inquiries and issued reports that concluded the attack was a mistake due to Israeli confusion about the ship's identity. Others, including survivors of the attack, have rejected these conclusions and maintained the attack was deliberate. Thomas Hinman Moorer, of the 7th Chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff, accused President Johnson of having covered up that the attack was a deliberate act. In May 1968, the Israeli government paid the U.S. $3.32 million, equivalent to $30 million in 2024, to the U.S. government in compensation for the families of the 34 men killed in the attack. In March 1969, Israel paid further $3.57 million to men who had been wounded. In December 1980, it agreed to pay $6 million as the final settlement for material damages to the ship, plus 13 years of interest. So right there is basically the gist of the story, that during the Six-Day War, we had a spy ship, but we were an ally with Israel in international waters, and it just got attacked. Now, we're going to hear from one of the survivors, but there are many other videos you could watch from the survivors. It was very obvious that this was a United States ship. We were allies with Israel. The plane had been flying around, circling them earlier. They saw that they had an American flag, a large American flag displayed. They were even waving at the Israeli pilot. They were able to tell it was Israeli planes. That's how well they were able to see each other. And then later on, what happens? They get attacked. And this should have been like a major act of war. But at the same time, everybody just said it was an accident. And don't worry about it. We're sorry. You know, everybody just forget about it and move on. Now, when you look into these things and you think, why would Israel attack one of our Navy ships when we're an ally. Was it an accident? If it was an accident, that was a huge accident. And why wasn't there more outrage for a nation to be that irresponsible, to do something that bad? Why did so little happen as a result? And it's one of those things, it's not hard to figure out what was likely the reason for it. And I'm going to share my opinions, but I'm going to wait until after you hear from Ron Kukal, who is an actual survivor of the USS Liberty attack. So let's listen to what he has to say. Thank you so much for coming on this program. It is a real pleasure talking to you. I've been wanting to have this conversation for a while, and I've really just been interested in hearing your testimony of that day in June 8th, I believe, 1967, when all that took place. And so just share your thoughts or give us your testimony about what it was like that day.
Well, first of all, I'd like those that are watching to know that I serve as a chaplain for the USS Liberty Veterans Association, and I have for well over 55, 56 years now. And I'm very inclined to speak about the miracles that happened that day, what God did to save the Liberty from going to the bottom. When someone asks me about that, I'm just elated, and I just absolutely go ballistic because God. I know that God saved me. When I started church, I was probably, I don't know, maybe 6, 7 years old. A little Methodist church back in Rushville, Nebraska, and it was a smaller church, but I learned a lot of things there that after all these years I had to look back on to realize that everything I was taught was not exactly true. But that's my opinion. That's not. I'm not trying to push that down anybody's throat. But I look back all those years and I thought, wait a minute. What's the first thing that hit your mind, Ron, after the attack was over and you were standing out on the deck with all those bodies laying everywhere? What hit you first? And it was a teaching that I got when I was a child, when they taught me that Israel won wars, for example, with very few people, God's help, and all that. And I thought to myself, well, that's what I was taught, but where was God today? Well, I know exactly where he was, Pastor. And so I like to relate to the day of the attack. Come with me, if you will, please, down to the pretty dark spaces, 2 decks below the main deck. And if you can picture it, if you're in your mind, what it's like down there, nothing but gray painted steel all around you, everywhere. And so we had just got done with a general quarters drill at would have been 2 o'clock over there that time. And so after that, I went straight down to my workspace, and we were pretty confident that we were well protected and there was not any problem. So as time went on, it probably wasn't much time. Probably by the time I got down to my desk, which was 2 decks down below the main deck, I was a supervisor of super high frequency communications and things like that. But anyway, the captain came over the intercom, the 1MC it was called, and said, "Prepare for torpedo attack." Now I got to tell you, that's pretty surprising to someone that just came down from general quarters, getting a pat on the back for doing a good job and all that kind of stuff, and then the captain coming across saying that. And of course, he didn't say this is not a drill, but I knew that what he was saying was exactly on the line and on the mark. So I prepared for it, and my first preparation was to get up from my desk, went over to some of the equipment I would had been operating, and I went to my knees, begging for my life. I might say on the little trip that I have from my desk to my equipment that something kept running through my mind. This can't be happening. This only happens in the movies, but it was happening, and I knew my life was on the line, and I knew that prayer was the only thing that was going to save me. So what I did, Pastor, was I prayed for my life. I prayed for the life of the rest of the guys. Got up from my prayer and headed back to my desk. Now, to put this in the proper frame of time, as I was walking from my equipment back to my desk, I think the torpedoes from the attacking ships were on their way. And so I was still pretty calm. I had prayed, I'd done everything I possibly could. And as I sat down, and believe me, I'm having a hard time recalling all this, and I recall it the best that I can. As I was sitting down, a voice came to me. I don't think anybody else heard it. And it said simply, "Get down and get down now." That voice was insistent, it was very clear and concise, and I proceeded to do exactly just that. However, about the time that I was ready to go put my nose to the steel deck, the torpedo was in it within, I think, within maybe 2 to 3 seconds from entering the ship and exploding about 50, 60 feet from me. And if you take the time reference in mind here, like from the time I started praying to the time that I heard this voice to the time I tried to get down, and what I know about this is that my brain would not telegraph those messages to my limbs to get down and get down now. However, about 2 to 3 seconds before the torpedo exploded, I was put to the steel deck. And I know I was put there by God or an angel or a guardian, whatever it was at the time. My position from standing upright to being with my nose to the steel deck was not done by me. I want everyone, the whole world, to know that that was just one of the miracles that day. And I can tell it best because it happened to me. So, as I said, I was standing upright. Next thing I knew, I was laying with my face, my nose right to the steel deck. The torpedo exploded almost immediately from the time I was put there. That take in consideration this time element. How is it possible? How is it possible that I was on that deck within the context of maybe 5 seconds of time of thinking and trying to do it myself? How did I get there? There's never been a question in my mind. And of course, my training back in church and Sunday school and when I was a young boy, I knew immediately who was doing all this. And although I didn't see anybody, anyway, after the explosion, I could hear the shrapnel flying through the air, killing everyone but one other guy, I think it was, or maybe two other guys in that compartment. I think there was probably maybe 25 or 30 men there. So 3 of us survived it. It's just, it's really hard for me to explain and try to go back to that time because I was also the body or the officer in charge of the body recovery and 25 men in pieces down below. And then here comes another miracle. I was down there all the time. Most of the men had to go up, come back down, go up, come back down, but I had to stay down there as a supervisor of the whole thing. And they complained constantly about the smell. The smell was horrifying down there. I mean, you can imagine it, right? When we arrived in Malta, it was a few days getting there, maybe, I don't know, 5 or 6 days to get there. And it was just, well, anyway, I want to get back to the smell that everybody was complaining about. Um, and excuse me for losing my train of thought. I am 85 years old.
Hmm.
But the smell, I just want to say this, I never smelled a thing. I stood down there all the time. I never smelled nothing. Another miracle. Just after the torpedo had exploded, uh, we were all trying to get out of there, down there, where the torpedo hole was. And when I got to the main deck, um, I had to turn around because one of the officers there said I needed to go back down, ordered me to go back down and make sure everybody got out. Well, I didn't want to do it, but an order is an order, so I did it. And when I went down there and looked down the hatch hole, I hollered for everybody, um, screamed as loud as I could to give someone an answer. Nobody answered. So when I got back topside, I told Lieutenant George Golden, who is a Jewish fellow, by the way, that I could hear nobody. So that order was followed. I immediately went to the hatch door, which led to the main deck outside. It was a bright sunny day. There was a cloud in the sky. So I walked out there, and the rest of the men that had survived were out there slapping each other on the back, shaking each other's hands, and just elated. Well, Phil Turney, our Liberty Veterans Association president, said he was watching us. He said, I don't know what was wrong with you guys. There were machine gun bullets still being fired at the ship all over the place. They were just flying around you everywhere, and you're out there slapping each other on the back and shaking each other's hands. And I said, well, I don't know. I guess maybe it had to do with the fact that we simply got out of there and are still alive and just never noticed all them bullets flying all over the place. So I've told you of about 3 different miracles that I saw and observed myself. And believe me, there was plenty more than that. Um, I could go on and on and on about it.
Yeah. Well, something I guess I'm just wondering about, as you describe that, of course, being on a Navy ship and then it getting torpedoed and stuff. I mean, I would think that would be just very scary because it's such, you're confined in so many ways. It's not like you can just run away. You're surrounded by water. So I guess I'm just in whenever you first got hit with that torpedo. I know you mentioned that you got a warning to prepare for an attack. But in your mind, what did you think was going on? Who did you think was attacking the ship at that point?
Had no idea.
Really?
None of us. Um, they had circled us. The Israeli Defense Force had circled us that morning, and they even waved to some of the guys on the deck and all that kind of stuff. So we felt that, well, we're under the protection of them people, and so we were actually pretty calm about the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right. So, yeah, because I remember from the stories that I've heard, yeah, the plane had been circling around. You guys been waving at each other. There were American flags displayed, correct?
yeah, they shot it down, and then our signalman Joe Metters run another one back up, and I think it was the holiday colors, which is larger than the regular flag. And of course, he could tell you much more about it than I could, but the flag was displayed.
Mm-hmm.
It was shot down and displayed again.
Okay.
There were huge letters and numbers on the ship, on the hull,
Mm.
on the fantail. On the fantail, it said USS Liberty. On the hull, on the bow side, on the starboard side, and both sides, port side, was GTR 5, which is their letters were extremely large. And I will say this: although Admiral Thomas Moore is gone, he's been dead for quite a while now. Um, he just, I don't know how to put this. He says, well, he had been in World War II and he had identified ships on the ocean for a long time. And he says that he told the whole world, or the news agencies, that there's no way that the Liberty should not have been identified. That's what he said. And I became sort of friends with him, as close as you can get to an admiral. But I was just a petty officer myself. But we got to be pretty close friends, and he actually designated one of his assistants, who was Admiral Merlin Starring, to keep in communications with us. And actually, Admiral Starring came to my home, stayed overnight, and we talked at length. And I guess I just wanted to kind of sneak this in there, that I just can't say enough about the leadership we had back then. There is no words to even describe it. There's actually no words to even describe the miracles. Awesome, fantastic. No, they're just not there.
Yeah.
This is the power of God. It's awesome.
I from what I've looked into on this, the more I read about it, the more I learn, the more I do think it was a miracle that the ship survived, and just in my opinion. And so I've looked into this so much, I'm just fascinated talking to somebody who is actually there. And so just something that I was wanting to ask you about too, because if you're in the Navy, you obviously are aware of potential danger, but at the same time, you're typically going to have an idea of when you're more likely to be in danger. So the ship, I know you guys were in international waters at the time, so you're going to feel a little safer, I would think. You've seen an ally plane flying around you, so you're going to feel good about that. That's going to make you feel a little bit safer. So obviously, when all of a sudden you're getting attacked, and you're getting attacked, while that would be terrifying, at what point did you realize you were being attacked by Israel? And what went through your head after you realized you were being attacked by Israel?
Actually, I can't really tell you when we really found out, because it was quite a while. We sailed back to, after the attack was over with, we sailed to Malta. I don't think any of us knew then. It took 5 or 6 days, maybe even more than that, to get to Malta. But, I can't really put my finger on when they told me, but I do remember my reaction, and it was one of disbelief that would happen that way. So consequently, Pastor, this has caused me to look way deeper into Scripture, way deeper into what the Bible has to say, and to have an open mind to what I'm being told now by certain pastors of my Pastor Chuck Gifford in Kalispell, Montana. That's where I started learning a lot about the truth. So this is so spiritual. And to try to tell people this over the last 57 plus years, the truth about this, and then you equate it to what you had been taught as a young boy, people are going to have a hard time figuring out that maybe what they were being taught is not exactly correct. Again, my opinion.
Right.
So,
Yeah, no, I can totally understand. And so I guess when it comes to all this, why do you think it's such a sensitive matter too? Because this subject is one that, people get offended at you even talking about it. And, it's like, I'm sorry, but the official story doesn't make sense. And even if even if the official story is true, it's like the negligence here is so bad. It's like, seems like more heads should have rolled. If, so I don't know. In your opinion, why do you think this is such a sensitive matter?
Well, I guess in my own case, considered sensitive because of what we were taught in the earlier years of the church. And my First Baptist Church here in Sheridan, I always taught um, almost to bow down to any Jewish person I ever saw. Well, I got to tell you, Pastor, we could get into this pretty deep. I had to look and look and look. First verses I came on were Revelations 2:9 and 3:9, which caused me to work and lurk on other things that might be, associated with that. So I learned a lot of that from Liberty Fellowship in Kalispell, and trying to get it across to other people. I'm just me. I'm the ordinary common man. How are you going? How are they going to listen to me? I don't have all those abbreviations behind my name or any of that kind of stuff. I just was highly trained by the Naval Security Group, NSA, all those places. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I can't go any further on that one.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
No.
frustrating.
Well, and were you ever personally told by anyone not to talk about what happened after the incident?
I was never personally told that. However, our president, Phil Turney, he was put together with a few other men in a certain compartment in the ship and threatened with 10 years in the pen and $10,000 fine or more. And Phil can tell you that. I hope maybe you'll have him on one of these days. He's very polished, a very good man to be interviewed. So that's how that was.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. No, I'd definitely be interested in talking to him. So, in when they gave you guys the official story, and they explained what happened. I mean, how did they put it? Did they describe it as an accident? Was there some kind of apology? Did the United States claim any fault, or was it all Israel? I mean, what did they tell you guys? Because obviously, after suffering something like that, after seeing so many of your friends die, you're going to have questions. And so I'm just curious as to what they were telling you then.
Well, a 10-day Naval Board of Air Inquiry come up with the fact that it was an accident. Okay, which none of us, I don't know of one on the ship that ever believed that was true. And on top of that, why is it that it only took 10 days to do something that should have been a congressional investigation? Another thing I might like to say here also, and please don't take me as bragging or nothing. I just want to say this. 3/4 of the ship were the most trusted by the United States government of that era, carrying a top secret clearance. And believe me, when they checked into mine, they knew the address of my grandmother when she lived in Prague. That's how deeply they went into my background. They also went into any of your backgrounds. If you belong to any type of a racist organization, you are not allowed that clearance. And they would check everything on you. So how is it? I ask you this, Pastor, maybe you can answer it.
Mm-hmm.
I ask you, how is it that the most trusted men in the United States Navy, and I think our supporting crew were also handpicked, how is it that we would be lying about what we're talking about here? How is that possible that many men could get together and start lying about something? Well, the truth is like a two-edged sword as far as I'm concerned.
Right. Right. Well, and when it comes to things like this, I guess for me, when I look at this story, I think the reason it's so sensitive is because when you just look at the facts, the obvious conclusion is kind of a painful thing for even me to accept. And I was never in the military. I've never been in the military, but as somebody who has been in the military and who has served and who experienced this type of thing, I mean, you are the one putting your life on the line. You are the one putting your life at risk in these situations, and you've got to want to believe that the government has your best interests at heart. They're going to not put you in a situation that is not absolutely necessary for the good of the country. And so being able to trust your superiors and your government, I mean, is an important thing if you're in the military. And I guess after experiencing something like this, I mean, how did it make you feel towards your government and your leaders, your superiors?
Well, I was always taught to respect the office of the president, vice president, whatever office. I do respect the office, and of course, not necessarily the man at one time. But that's how we were taught. I felt it was the right thing. And, I don't think since day one, since I found out who it was, that I've ever held any animosity towards a whole race of people for what happened that day. Because I know there are those that call themselves Jews and are not. I know that one of my Jewish friends told me, Ron, all Jews are not Zionists and all Zionists are not Jews. Bang.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. That's there. And so here we are pointing our finger, not us. I don't know of anybody that ever would do that. They speak the truth, and that's it. That was aboard the ship and are still alive, and there's very few of us left that could tell you any more than that. I don't know. Well, you're going to have to hit me with another question.
Yeah, no, like I said, I guess the reason I'm even asking that, I'm not trying to pry too much, but at the same time, it's something we should care about, as a citizen, and especially one who's not been in the military and who has not had to fight. I think it's important for people to appreciate, soldiers and what they do. And we should care very much about the people who are representing us, who are fighting for us. And if they are treated wrong, if they are, if there is some great wrong done to them, I don't think we should just stand for that as citizens. I don't like the efforts that have been out there to silence all of you on these things. I mean, no matter what, you guys have a right to be heard. Something pretty horrific happened. And when the government comes back with a story that just doesn't make any sense, and even if they're telling the total truth, shows major negligence, from one of our allies, I feel like I feel like you guys, deserve to be heard, and we ought to care about that kind of thing, because I can only imagine what that would be like. And so I just, I think there's something to be said about listening to the testimony of the actual witnesses and the people who were there and what they think about it and how they feel. Because I have my opinions based on what I'm reading, but I wasn't there. And so, and I know you don't like to speculate, and you definitely don't have to, but I mean, at the end of the day, I know it's one of those things where I'm interested in hearing what you guys think happened that day and what you think the motivations were. And I think people need to take into consideration. And I love what you said too about not all Jews are Zionists and not all Zionists are Jews, because to me, they're trying to make this out to be like some kind of racial hatred type things, but it's not. It's a bad political ideology is what Zionism is. And it is something that our country, while we are a predominantly Christian nation, our government is hardcore Zionist. And I think it's behind a lot of the junk that we've gotten involved in the
So
last
do I.
several years. So,
So do I. Yeah.
but yeah, but I don't know if you want to elaborate or like, just kind of give your opinions anymore on that, or, but if not, that's fine. But yeah, I think we should all care about how you guys think and feel about these things.
I do see that coming around a little bit. I've got my nose on Facebook, or I'll probably way more than I should have, but I do see not it's a more than a smattering. It's quite a few people now that this is coming around to them, that it is laying your life on the line, and you do what you're ordered to do, and of course we did that. But let me ask you a question, Pastor. How would What really concerns me, but is how the rest of the world is looking at this country now. Because as a kid, I remember they used to want to know about our ways,
Mm-hmm.
and they would ask about them. And now, what are we looking like? Are we a fourth world country, fifth, 10th?
Mm.
I don't know. However, and then you see, and I don't want no controversy here, but then you see people that are trying to do the right thing, and believe me, sometimes there has to be a lot of destruction before you can construct something back and make it what you want it to be. And the destruction is just, it's part of the damage that happens on the way back. And I'm absolutely, I just can't figure out why people can't see that.
Mm.
I've been through a couple of those little situations where, boy, you had to give up a lot, but it was necessary for the good of all. And
Well,
I really am concerned about, our bottom line from day one has always been love of country, love of our family and your family. And as a chaplain for the LVA for this many years, um, I've worked hard at trying to convince the rest of the crew that um, it was God that did this, God that saved us. It was people, when we got to Malta, admirals were standing on the pier looking at the ship. They say there's no way that ship should have stayed afloat. Well, the hand of God kept it afloat, so it's going to stay afloat. Um, he sent men from the USS Davis that came by the next day. Those men, those honorable men, went down below and they shored up the bulkheads. They locked themselves in, by the way. So if the bulkheads would have give down there, their life would probably have been over with.
mm.
So, and they got it shored up to the point where they were strong enough, they thought, to get us to Malta, and what you did. And I want to tell you one other thing that a trauma doctor told me, because I spent a lot of time in the VA hospital because of being in charge of the body recovery down below, and the attack, and then the treatment we got from our government when we came home. I'm very sure, 110%, that this nation is going to suffer for that kind of treatment, and it's under judgment. And God is here right now. He's nothing in the future. He's here. I wish I could say more, but all I do is get myself in trouble because I don't know all by a
Yeah.
long shot.
Well, can you explain a little bit more too about the treatment that you got from the government after you came home?
Well, it started, I guess, aboard ship, and I wish Phil was here with me, but he just told me that they had him and several other members of the crew down there and threatened them with the 10 years and all that stuff before we even got to, and then before we got home. When they got home, I didn't have to take the ship home. I got to fly back from Madrid, Spain to New York City. And again, I'm losing my train of thought on what I wanted to say. I'm just so sorry for that. It's
No, that's
horrible.
okay. Yeah, no, you're just. I was asking about just the negative treatment you guys got from the government.
Yeah, I was trying to put it all in order because I really not really good about putting it all in order. But um, when they said that this was an accident, when Captain Ward Boston told us that he was made to make the Naval Board of Inquiry, the outcome become it was an accident. He was forced into it, and we have a letter with the Liberty Veterans Association that he stated that very thing before he died. So when people tell you that this is a spiritual battle on this earth, they better believe it. They better believe it.
Mm.
And let me say this also, Pastor. And I've said it Liberty Fellowship, being interviewed several times. There's no words. I can't think of a single adjective, I think it is, to describe how that ship stayed afloat. I sit here to this day and I shake my head. Everything they had everything they had to put us to the bottom. They had
Mm.
everything and we had nothing. So, where was God that day? I'm just asking.
Yeah. Well, and I do. I have my opinions about what I think took place today, and I definitely think it was a miracle when you look at certain things that were just taking place right then during that time. Um, it had these things not been stopped. In my opinion, I do think this was supposed to escalate into something much greater. And but I believe the survival of all of you made it hard for America to get involved in a way that would have escalated it more. And and so I just yeah, I think it seems to me like the devil was just trying to make certain things happen that we believe are gonna happen prophetically, and God's like, no, not yet. It's almost like God just stopped it during that time,
Amen.
and
Amen.
but it is an amazing thing to think about, and just what it could have escalated to. A lot of things were being set up to like kick off a World War III, and it didn't happen. Everything.
We're about
Uh,
5 minutes from it.
yes, yeah, we really were. And a 6-day war is a very rare thing, but it's like the plan was going well, and then things got messed up. So it is. It's just. It is. It's one of these things I just look back on, and I'm reading it. It's like the obvious. It's a painful reality that I don't think most people want to accept. And you had asked the question too about how people look at our country, and what I think we've been seeing in our country for a long time now, and it's still there today, is I do think that our leaders, that many of them, are leading our country, trying to do what's right for our country. But at the same time, we are a very powerful country, and there are those within our government who are thinking a lot more about or they're thinking about a lot of other things other than just the United States. They are thinking on a more global. They have a more global agenda of things, and so because we're so powerful, if you want to move and shake things in the world, you gotta you got to work with America on those things. And I think we have a lot of people very high up in our government that are thinking more about global events and world empires than they are just the United States of America. And so we're still doing pretty good as a country just because they need us to be doing good so they can have the power that they need. But I do believe that those higher up, globalist type people who are trying to just affect things in the world, I think they are just truly, truly evil, and they are very powerful. And so the people that we look at and think about in our leadership, a lot of the people that we elect, we can't imagine them sacrificing their own. But I think a lot of the people who are really pulling the strings are people that we don't know, and I think they absolutely would sacrifice many of us, because they're not about America. They are about this world empire, and I think it's truly satanic. I really do, and I think the alls we can do is just let people see and be aware of some of the evil that has gone on in our world and our government has done. And if anybody has a right to talk about it, it's somebody like yourself. And so that's why I wanted to, have you on here. I'll share my thoughts that people have, but at the end of the day, I'm just somebody looking back on these things. For sure, I think we should listen to the perspective of somebody who was there.
You said a mouthful. I can
Yeah.
hardly add on to that. Again, I'd like to reiterate our reasoning for staying and speaking out loud for over almost 58 years now has been for this country, for the red, white, and blue, for your family, your babies. We're here for you, and we've proved it. We've proved it.
Mm-hmm.
I defy anyone to say, "Oh, you just a bunch of this, a bunch of that." Well, I'm on to that type of conversation, and I know that the bottom line is always to cause controversy, even though the truth is being told. The bottom line is to cause controversy. But as I wanted to say, it's been for this country. It's been for the babies in this country, for the families in this country, for everything that this country stands for. We still stand for.
That's good. Well, hey, I really appreciate you coming on here and talking about this. And, I'm thankful for all the USS Liberty survivors that are out there doing interviews, just bringing awareness to it, because, I'm embarrassed that I didn't know anything about this until not that many years ago. And it's just something people don't like talking about, and I think these kind of things need to be talked about, because we've seen a lot of things in our government, even in the last years, that it's just like everybody's got this idea that, they're all good and sweet and looking out for us. Maybe we just have these minor disagreements, but no, there's some pretty ugly things that have happened historically that governments have done to their own people. And I think we ought to have a skepticism. I think we do need to be watching these people, holding them accountable. And unfortunately, we're all told what to think, told what to look at. And when we accidentally see something, we're just forced to look away from it. And I don't think we have to do that. And I don't want to do that. And I'm glad you guys aren't just going along and ignoring it. And I'm glad you're speaking out. And so thank you very much. I appreciate it. And do you have any final words for the audience?
A short prayer.
All right.
Father in heaven, you know and I know, and other people are starting to begin to understand that what we've been doing for years, being an instrument, and only an instrument that you kept alive to tell this country how much we love it. We love it so much that we would put our life on the line. We would stand for almost 58 years, I believe it is now, trying to tell the truth, and we have done it for you, And what I meant to say is, Lord, you know what I'm saying here, that I'm just overwhelmed by the power that you displayed on June 8th, 1967. And I'm so happy to be a child and a servant. In Christ's name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Tom.
Well, I hope y'all enjoyed that interview. I really appreciate Brother Ron coming on and giving us his story. I'm very thankful for these men who are willing to speak out about this, even though it caused them to get a lot of criticism, which is not right and it is not fair. We have this weird culture in America where we are never allowed to question anything when it comes to Israel without getting accused of being anti-whatever. And I'm fed up with it. I'm tired of it. When it comes to this story, something went very, very wrong. And if it was in fact just a mistake, it was a huge mistake, and there should have been way more consequences. And it's just, but the reality is, it looks like something much worse. And I don't want to just come on here and just accuse our government of horrific things, because at the end of the day, we don't really know. But, it did kind of look like they were willing to sacrifice one of their own ships just to allow us to get into war. And that's what many people think, that that ship was supposed to go down, which would have justified us getting heavily involved in a major war that I personally think would have led to World War III. And in just my opinion, if the devil was behind this thing, I think he was trying to kick off the end times. And I think the Lord said no, because when you look at what most of us in the futurist world, the way we think things are going to play out, it looked like the beginnings of much of it was happening during that time. First off, during the 6-Day War, that was when the Israelis actually got control of the Temple Mount, where they went up there and said the Temple Mount is in our hands. But interestingly enough, after that happened, because of global pressure, they basically had to allow the Muslims back up there to kind of have control. And that's another story for another day. But if you go look at how they took over the Temple Mount during that time and had to give it back, it was in reality to prevent us going into a major, major war. And so the Jews to this day, they still claim to be in possession of the Temple Mount, but they have the Islamic Waqf that kind of watch over everything. But they reserve the right to go up there if they think things get out of line. And it was also during the 6-Day War, they took back the Wailing Wall area because they had lost that after 1948. And so what we have today in Israel is what's known as the status quo. They've never really agreed to who owns what, but everybody's kind of doing their thing, following their traditions, and no one's shooting at each other right now. And so everything, while things are calm, everybody just leaves everything alone. And it's what is known as the status quo, is how they always put it. And anything that causes, if anybody does anything out of the ordinary, it can ignite a whole bunch of conflict. And it's just interesting, the situation as is right now, it's been that way since that 6-Day War. I think things were majorly escalating during that time. And if that was going to happen too, it would help if America got heavily involved. And so many believe that that ship was supposed to go down, and they were probably going to blame the Egyptians or someone else, which would get America to want to go to war and help Israel. But I think they personally botched the mission when they were trying to sink it. I think it didn't go like they were supposed to, and word was getting out that it was the Israelis attacking them, and it was just going to be too hard to cover up what happened. That's what it looks like. I know that's a horrible thing to think. Nobody wants to think that about their own government, but it looks like our government was willing to sacrifice one of its own ships with its own people on it in order to get involved in a war. And you say our government would never do that. Isn't it interesting how every time our nation is anxious to get into war, you go look at any of the major wars we've had in the past, there was always many people within our government wanting to get involved in different conflicts, but you've got to have the people have to have your back. You have to do something to make them want to get involved, and something magically always happens, like 9/11, like Pearl Harbor. There's always these events that just seem to happen that causes America to say, let's get involved. And it looks like that's what that was. I don't know for sure, but I do think our government is capable of that kind of thing. Our government proved what they're capable of a lot in 2020 with all the junk that happened during that time. And I think a good, healthy skepticism when it comes to our government is healthy. We need to watch these people. We need to keep them in check. You think, these politicians, there's no way they're that evil. Well, listen, I believe we have people in our government that care about our nation. But I also believe we have people within our government who are looking into more of a globalist agenda and a Zionist agenda. And those are the ones that scare me. Those are the ones that I am worried about. And when I look back at the 6-Day War, I personally think it was supposed to be a lot more than that. But I think they got found out. I think the fact that that ship survived and stayed afloat, it messed up their plans. That's my opinion on it. But I'm entitled to my opinion, and so I wanted to talk about this because I think it needs to be talked about, and I hope you enjoyed the conversation. Make sure you like and share and get the word out, and do your own research into it. And go ahead. I mean, read the official story. The official story doesn't make me feel any better. It causes me to have more questions. In fact, I'll just say this. When I was watching the most of the documentaries and things about it, I kept thinking of all these other possibilities. And it was when I went and I was reading official stories and people who were trying to act like it was, what the government says, they actually made me believe the documentaries even more, because it's like, really? And it's that just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But I don't know, maybe if our government is that incompetent, or the Israeli government is that incompetent, are we sure we want to be allies with these people? Are we sure we should believe everything they're saying about what happens to them? So, but boy, look at what happens in this country if you ever dare question anything about Israel. So anyway, I hope this was help and you enjoyed it. And so we'll see y'all next time.